Insert consistent intro here. Today we'll be talking about network editor panes, which really exciting, I know, but seriously, they are extremely useful and lots of people don't know how to use them, so here we are. By default, every project starts with one big pane filling the whole main window, except for stuff at the top like the menu bar and the timeline at the bottom. We can split a pane into multiple panes using this little arrow icon in the top right corner. So click that and do split left right. It's going to split this pane into two different ones. We can also close panes with that menu. So close, though it's not going to let us close this last one in the main window. You can also take a pane and move it to its own window. And there are two ways to do this. You can either do duplicate pane or floating copy. If you do duplicate pane, it will make an actual copy of it in a window here, and that is totally independent of the other one. If you do floating copy, it will close out that panel and move it into a window, and then when you close that window, it pops back into place. Meaning of that is a little bit confusing, but that's what it is. There's also a button in here to temporarily maximize a given pane to fill up the whole window. Each pane is focused on a particular comp, and in this address bar at the top of the pane, you can see what comp we're looking at. So if we navigate into a base here, then you're going to see that path update, and so now we're looking at the contents of this comp. Notice how these two panels are totally independent of each other, so you can have totally different networks for different comps open at the same time. So whatever is in the address bar is the one whose contents you're viewing. So you're not going to actually see that operator. So here we're in project one. We don't see the project one comp. We see the contents of the project one comp. There are a few different types of panes. And in the top left corner, this little arrow, we can choose which type we want this pane to be. Panel panes are a way to show the interface for a UI component. So right now we're in a base, so it doesn't have an interface, so we're not seeing anything. But if we go up to project one, we see something here. Not super helpful though. We're looking at the interface of project one itself, but I did add a little UI component tree lister here. And so now when we're looking at that, we're seeing this whole thing is the UI for that component. In a sense, this is kind of different from how the address is handled for network editors. For those, if you put project one in the address, you see the contents inside project one, not some sort of outer view of it. But for panels, you need the address to be the specific panel comp that you want to show. While this tree lister is automatically scaling to whatever size we make this pane, it's doing that because of this size from window parameter on it. So if we switch that off and resize the pane, then it's going to just kind of stretch it or do whatever it needs to do to fit it into that area. So you may end up with some blank space around it. For now, we're going to jump past the geometry viewer and just go straight to top. So let's discuss top viewer panes. Top viewers show all the tops in whatever component you're looking at that have their display flag on. So over in the network here, if we switch on this little display toggle on some tops, then it's going to show those both in the background of this network editor. It's also going to show them in this top viewer pane that's looking at that same component. And we can right click in the network here, and under display, we can have it switch off, showing them in the background, but then we still get to see them here. And the nice thing about these ones is that they're interactive. So you can do all the kind of things that you can do in a top viewer and just fits into the main window there. Top viewer panes are basically the same thing. So any chop that we have that has that display flag toggled on, we're going to see it there. And it'll also show up in the background by default, but we can switch that off using that little toggle there. And if we have multiple chops with that display toggle on, it's going to show all of them, though it looks like here this one's getting a little confused with this null for some reason. Not sure why. Maybe it's a bug. Now let's take a look at the geometry viewer. So we switch over to that type. Then we're going to see a nice interactive viewer of all of the kind of geometry related operators in this component, in this case in project one, that have their display toggle switched on. So right now we've got a couple of geo comps that have their display toggle. It's even going to show the little highlight of which one is selected. It'll also do that just for individual SOPs, or so we can see how we're seeing that along with those geometry comps. Then if you want to navigate into a particular thing, then you'll get a view of just the stuff inside that. Here we're looking at Geo1, and the only thing in there with the display toggle on is this cube here. But you'll notice that it's applying the texture and material and stuff from that geometry comp that it's inside. So this is a good way to get an overview of a scene that has multiple different pieces of geometry in it. Next are animation panes. This one works specifically for animation comps. And if you try opening it and the thing in the address bar isn't an animation comp, it's still going to show you something and let you interact with it, but it's not going to do what you want. So instead, if we go through this navigation bar and show an animation comp, it's also not going to show it there. This seems to be kind of a bug. So the best way to work with animation editor panes is instead of just switching up an existing pane into that, we can go over to it, go over to an animation comp, right click it and do edit animation. And then it'll pop out a new pane at the bottom that's in that particular type. You'll notice that the address bar here isn't linked up. That might be a bug, or maybe it's respecting this instead. It's kind of hard to tell. But this is generally how you want to work with timelines and that kind of thing. Next are parameter panes. And these ones can get a little bit unintuitive. So you'll notice that what's in the address bar here is project 1, but we're seeing the parameters of animation 1. So what's going on there? It's showing that because this is the thing that is currently selected inside of project 1. Although it seems like there's kind of a little bug where if you select different things, it doesn't update that until you switch out of that mode and then back into it. And now we're seeing the parameters of Geo2 instead. Seems like kind of a bug in Touch itself, but there is a nice workaround that we're going to cover in a little bit. Next up are the Textport and DATS panes. So we switch over our pane here into that. This is going to give us a Textport. So this will show errors that occur. So particularly like things in Python that go wrong. You can also run Python code in it. It is possible to have multiple Textport panes open, and you can also even have one in a separate window by doing the dialog menu. If you have multiple open, things get a little weird, and it's kind of unpredictable which one the error will show up in. So typically I recommend only having one of those open. We can also use it to edit DATs. So if we right-click any DAT and do Edit Contents in Textport, then it'll pop open a little tab here, and then we get a nice editor. This could either be, a text DAT or a table DAT of any kind, anything that's editable. So that's all the types of panes. Now let's talk about how to get multiple panes working together. So I'm going to switch this back to Network Editor. On the top right, next to this maximize button, there's this little 0 button. If you click that, we get some options that allow us to link different panels together. So if we set this to 1, and then we set another panel also to 1, then anytime that we navigate in one of them, it's going to navigate in both. And that also works if you have a different type of panel. So if this is a geometry viewer, then as we navigate around in here, then we're going to see it update and show, the geometry and whatever we're viewing on this side. And you can have up to 3 different linkages between panes, though I've rarely used more than one. There are also options in here to link to what's inside of the other pane that has that number. Those can get a little bit weird. If we go to our pane here and we set this to inside 1, then this will look at whatever is selected in the network that we're looking at here. So if we go inside our base here, then we're seeing all the contents of that base that have their little display toggle on and are geometry-ish. Though this is kind of similar to what you would see in just a regular linkage. So it can be a little bit confusing with those inside links. So I don't often use those. If we do this with a parameter pane, then it's going to follow the selection of whatever goes on in this other pane that's linked to it. So this can be a nice way if you want to hide that default parameter dialog and just always have it, off in a special pane on the side. This can be a good way to do that. For tutorial videos, I often will have a pane here for this and then have another pane in the bottom that has like a preview of the output just to kind of fit things on screen for the recording. So that tends to work pretty well. Pane layouts are persisted within a project. So if we close this project and reopen it, it's going to come back looking the same. The exception to that is that only applies to stuff in the main window. So if we have stuff open in a separate window, maybe on another monitor or something, that's not going to automatically open by default. There are a bunch of predefined layouts that we can choose from too in this top bar here. So this can be a good way to get to a few different kind of like standard types of layouts. We can also save our own and then recall them. It'll add a little button there. So that can be a good way if you want to have like different views of your project that you can recall them easily. And it would include which operators are being viewed within each pane. Anyway, that's it for panes. They're really useful, so go forth and use them and enjoy. Let me know in the comments how you like to use panes or if there are other topics that you want me to cover. I'm trying to do more of these little topics that aren't covered often outside of reference materials, so if you can think of anything along those lines, let me know. I also just like getting comments, so, if you feel like doing that, it makes me happy. And if you want to support me making more of these, consider subscribing to my Patreon. You'll get early tutorial access and Discord, where I sometimes talk about unreleased stuff that I'm working on, and file downloads and other stuff like that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps more people see these videos, which I think is a good thing, and it really does motivate me to keep making more of them.